The Front Row Back Row podcast is a show where two grad school buddies discuss physical therapy entrepreneurship. I helped guide a company to an 8-figure exit, and I'm now starting my own mobile company. Brian grew his mobile practice to 4 clinics, and he's now doing $1 million in revenue. Join us as we help you grow your own business. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and with me as always is Dr. Brian Wolf. And together we are Physio Growth. We run a mastermind group. It's on School. You should join it. We are smart. Listen to us. So what we're going to talk about today is over how to mentally get through these like cold patient snaps. And I don't know about you, Brian. I know, well, I do know because you told me, but I'm here in Phoenix. It is hot. Anybody who can afford $175 an hour session is out of here, right? Those guys are in California. They're in Flagstaff. They are parts unknown, right? And, you know, you go from 2 times a week patient to like once a month patient, right? And the mental side of the business is tough, especially because we're so compassionate. We're with people. Like a lot of it is relationship based. And I found myself having to really go back and harken back to how do I get through this like cold snap mentally and break out of it. And I think that the biggest thing that I found is it's all about self-talk, right? And for me, what's helped me is being able to say, look, you know, whatever, today's the next day, or tomorrow's a new day, right?
Yeah.
Coach Krzyzewski always said this thing called next play, right? Where no matter what happens, you always say next play, because just go get your head out of what happened in the past. So that's helped me. But I mean, you've had a much longer career as an entrepreneur, even a longer career as a solo entrepreneur. So like what helped you through those, like, you know, touch and go times where, you know, it's either a slow period on the big level with your 5 clinics, or, you know, in my level where, you know, the numbers are much smaller and much more acute.
I think there's 2 things. Understanding that these swings get bigger, number 1.
Okay.
So it's not like cold periods for us go away, right? So just accepting the fact that, you know, this is going to happen. So when you think about cold periods in a physical therapy practice of any kind, when the percentages are down, that's why everybody has a productivity. Like, when people are like, oh, productivity clinic. The whole idea behind productivity is that we can measure if we're in a hot snap or cold snap.
Yeah.
And when we're in a cold snap and you've got 7 physical therapists, 8 physical therapists, and you're at 60%, guess what? You're getting smoked in that clinic, because not only are you down to 60%, but so is everybody else.
Yeah.
So the reality is of a utilization, when you're looking at that, I think tracking can really help. So it allows you to make better decisions, because I think what happens is, the analogy I would use is, imagine, you know, cold streaks and hot streaks in physical therapy as like a ship. So when you're a solo, you know, person, it's like a small canoe with just you in it. So the reality is a lot easier to turn the boat side to side.
Yeah.
The difference is when you're in a cold snap with like 100 people on there, it's like a big ship. So now all of a sudden it's a lot harder to turn the tides. However, in that big ship, I can also see what we're trending in what direction. And so if you're tracking that really well, it works really well. But that's also why in business, like, you see massive layoffs in places like, you know, when Facebook was laying people off, and other places, you know, that's what happens. It's a correction. Like, oh crap, we're way off course. We need to fix this. And so ultimately, I think understanding, just accepting like, hey, these things are going to happen. And so that's a really good thing, is just like understanding that's going to happen at times, that you're going to have these cold periods. And then I think really focusing on the wins. Like, when you win, be like, yeah, like, I got this win, and like enjoy it and really like acknowledge it. And that can be really helpful as well.
Well, there's 2 things I want to jump off with that, because I think that from a numbers perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's the hardest part for a solopreneur or a small clinic, right? Or a small company, is because you may only have a few years of history. So you can't look back and say, oh yeah, no, historically May has been awesome. April will be fine. We'll get through this. Right. Or you may not be able to say, okay, when we run a clinic at this many PTs, it almost always has a 3-month period of ramp up when we add another, right? So that you can kind of have this historical context, whereas, you know, you kind of don't have that when you're on the small canoe, right?
Yeah.
So that's the bad side of the small canoe, is that you do get affected pretty hard by a wind, right? That you won't from a big one. But I think the other piece about that is celebrating those wins are going to be super important, right?
For sure.
And knowing that, not saying the win is because of some other conditions, but like giving yourself credit for the fact that, like, yeah, I was the dog in the fight. I showed up. There's been so many times that I'll say like, oh yeah, this. I mean, you've heard me say it. We have, we talk about a few clients back and forth, and there's been times where I'm like, oh yeah, man, I got super lucky with that, and blah blah blah, and you've had to kind of stop me and be like, dude, you closed the business, you did this, like they love you, like this is why don't just think that like the stars aligned and you happen to be the one they tripped over.
Exactly.
So I think that's a big thing for smaller entrepreneurs. I mean, you could tell me if that same thing happens to you as a bigger one, but
Totally. Well, it's easy
to kind of give yourself credit.
yeah, well, 100%. I remember saying that too. It's like there's an aspect that it's like, hey, I just had this thing happen, and so oh, it's just luck, or oh, it's just this, or oh, it's related to that. What I think is important is to be like, hey, and this is the other aspect. What did I do to get that person? What did I do from that patient? What were the aspects of that? And what it does, it creates more tolerance to being like, okay, cool. I got these patients because I did this thing. Right. And so if I do that
expo, or I went to,
exactly,
I knocked on this door or something. Yeah.
I went to this networking group. I talked to this guy. I chatted with this person. You know what I mean? To see what the cause and the effect is. And so when you think about that as a relation, that really helps, because now you have a map. And so I think that's a really big piece, is like, and then honestly, something we're talking about, like, you and I are both married. We also know that, like, always bringing a solution isn't always the answer either, right? Sometimes you just need somebody to be like, dude, can I just like bitch to you for 20 minutes about like how I'm slow? No problem. Let's, like, you know what I mean? Let's talk about it. So I think on the flip side, I think a lot of times it's like, where can we be tactical and where can we help? But I think there's also this aspect of like, hey, here's some things we can change and how we can fix it. And ultimately, here's some things that we need to do that'll also be helpful. So I think there's all that in place as well. I think that can be a good way to look at it too.
Yeah, and if people listen to this, if you like this type of information, I know this isn't terribly tactical. We're normally a little bit more tactical, but if you like this sort of information, please tell your friends, follow us, 5-star review, all that good stuff. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the phrase "comparison is the thief of joy," right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is one of the things that I run into a lot, is that I have some really good colleagues in Phoenix particular, right? So I'll compare myself to people like you, right, where you're probably 5 or 6 steps ahead of where I'm at. But then I'll compare people that are maybe 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead, especially in my local market. And the problem is, I used to work with them. They were star employees for me. Like, I knew these guys were like rock stars, right? Well, then I go and I say, well, okay, at year 2, he had this many patients, or at year 1, they had this many patients. So I'm sitting there like, oh man, I got that, but like I could do better. And then you have to realize, like, no, that guy like kicks butt, man. Like, you're comparing yourself to an A player. Like, there are other A players out there. You're not the only one. So I mean, that part of comparison, I think, is important for people, is that you got to watch who you're comparing yourself to, and like the amount of control you have over that, right?
Agreed.
Because most of the time, who you're comparing yourself to, the reason you're doing it is because you really respect how much they show up and do the right things and all that stuff. You wouldn't compare yourself to, I mean, if you really want to be vindictive, you would probably compare yourself to the worst person. But like in my world, how many people are side hustle PTs, right? How many people are like, yeah, I did it, but then I got annoyed. So then I went back to like, this practice and work for somebody else. You don't see those people, right? You see the guy with the Instagram following, right? So I think that's a big thing, is like the comparison aspect of, it's okay to compare. You want to have something to reach for, but don't let that like compound a bad day.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of that, right? Because I think that the other aspect of it's by the way, what you're talking about, this actually is pretty tactical in a mindset perspective.
Yeah.
The grass is always going to look greener, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it is. It's why I tell people a lot of times, I'm like, look at what you're currently doing, and does it make sense to start a business? Does it make sense to do something different, right? Does it make sense to add something within your business? Does it make sense to add something, like you said, a side hustle versus like having your own type of business that you work for? There's a lot of really good ways. I mean, I like my advice to a lot of PTATs. PTATs just make so much money in the sense of, I have this PT job that I work, and then I do so much outside AT stuff. Those people have so much value because if they're like, this would be sick, I'll do this other outside AT stuff, make a bunch of hours as a per diem, but then I'm also going to drag them into the clinic. Clinic owners are going to be like, I want to keep that person around and keep them happy and pay them more money because of that. Yeah. So like when you think about that concept of how to do that, or just building different skill sets, like how to grow your different skill sets where you're able to get paid more because of you got a sales background, you've got a lead nurture background, whatever in that capacity. So to me, I think that's the thing about the grass starts green. That's why I think a lot of people get into cash physical therapy and then kind of flounder a little bit. Because I think there's a lot of misconception about being a business owner or cash physical therapy or other things. I just see it on a regular basis. Or quite frankly, not to talk too much smack on it, residencies are a big one with this, like sports residencies and orthopedic residencies and these kind of things. Like it doesn't, just because you're now been trained for a year at physical therapy school outside of physical therapy school doesn't all of a sudden make you this masterful. Like how many surgeons have you met, Owen, that are just out of fellowship that you're like, ooh, this person's not as good, right? So it's like a lot of
you're a slightly better new grad.
Exactly.
Right? I shouldn't say slightly, but you're a better new grad, right?
Yeah.
But there's some new grads that they end up in a freaking amazing clinic and they have a really passionate owner where they're doing better than a residency would.
Totally.
But yeah, no, I think that those are all really good points, for the fact of like, you just gotta get over the bad day, right? Like you're looking at it and you're just,
and
that's the business owner part. Like that you have to, I am very happy that I did 13 years in insurance-based PT because I saw the ups and downs. I saw the crazy late nights for the owners. I saw, I know what good is and what's unrealistic and all that. So, a lot of people haven't. Like you didn't come out with all that background when you started.
No, right? Let me give you another piece of tactical advice, just to kind of like as we're kind of bringing this home here. The other thing I would say is, as you grow, so does your email list, so does your contact list. Mm-hmm. So as you grow in that capacity, it makes it a lot easier when you send one email to 20 people. It makes it a lot easier when you can send it to 20,000 people, right? So then there's also a lot easier ways to get busier as you grow. So the dial becomes easier each and every time. Now, that being said, the swings are still there and there's still these cold snaps. So it's kind of having that mindset of this too shall pass. And like, I'm excited about all the good stuff that's also been going on too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if this hits you on a bad day as you're driving to your next patient, well, hopefully it helped.
Yeah. And by the way, part of this is what we do in our school group is just have conversations to share wins and pick each other up and do that stuff. We have tons of tactical advice and stuff. So if anybody ever wants to just join our group just to bullshit about their days and talk about mentorship and kick it with other PT owners who are in the same boat, it can be lonely out there. So that's part of where I think this comes from, right? So
honestly, I'd pay $100. I think my wife would pay $100 for me to not come back and complain.
Cheaper than therapy. Cheaper than therapy, guys. Cheaper than therapy. Probably a quarter of the price than therapy.
There you go.
Right. So anyway.
All right, my friend, we are out.
See you, man.
See ya.